This is Investment Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Daily live streaming interactive. Featuring Mrs. Backup. Subscribe, hit the notification, smash the likes. Now, here's Backup Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to Investment Perspectives. I'm Brad Kimes. You can follow me on Twitter at Backup Bradley above at the top of the screen. Okay, we're going to cover a few things today. We're going to start with David Schwartz in the recent PayID Developer Conference. Thank you to Steve Gulbranson for sending this over to me. And also a big shout out to XRP Talk and Speculation for recording the conference. Also, shout out to XR2D2, who also provided a great article on the Vanguard investment group. So we're going to talk about that too. And we're also going to talk about securities and FX markets. And I think this really just shows today in this video the many different fronts that digital assets are working towards conquering or integrating with, maybe is even a better word here. So let's start with setting this clip up with David, and then we'll talk about it here.
Thank you, Ethan. I've been working at Ripple for quite some time, and for the last 6 years or so, we've been working on enterprise payments and bringing digital assets to them. And as we dug into payment networks, what we discovered is that they're very siloed and fragmented. There's a lack of standards. If you built connectors between payment networks, how would people use them? What would you hook them up to? It kind of felt like we were trying to build Twitter without the internet. You need protocols, you need infrastructure. And what I think we realized is that there's two big missing pieces that are not incredibly difficult to build. Like, it seems like an intractable problem. You have all these payment networks all around the world. There's money in all these different places and all these different forms. There's conversion. But when you look at what makes email so great, what you realize is two critical pieces are missing. So one of them is there's no standard for end-to-end messaging. If I'm going to make a payment to you, there is no standard for how my payment system and your payment system say, hey, I'm going to make a payment to you. And the other thing that's missing is simple universal identifiers. These are two very, very basic, simple things that messaging has had for a long time and payments don't have. And those are the big pieces that PayID brings.
Okay, so right there, he makes so many great points in there. One is that when the early days when they're working on this payment solution and working on solving all the fragmentation that existed, it felt like they were building Twitter without the internet. You need the protocols, you need the infrastructure, right? And that is very important. And then you're talking about also being able to simplify the use of this system, like with a PayID. So this makes it more consumer friendly. It makes it more business friendly. You don't have to convince somebody that they got to learn how crypto works or to be a developer. This is exciting because he addresses this, and then you realize PayID is going to become this kind of solution for so many different banks and financial institutions and just businesses in general. All right, as well as people. So it's really great what PayID has done. Now let's move to the next piece because, like I said, we're going to cover some different areas here. So now we're going to look at the fact that we have a second round on June 30th. Christopher Giancarlo, head of the Digital Dollar Project, is going to be speaking for a second time in front of Congress about the digital dollar itself. Now, this is interesting because we know that Jerome Powell from the Federal Reserve has said that he doesn't want to see public and private relationship working on the digital dollar. He thinks that the Fed should do it and the Fed alone should do it. Okay. So I want to let everybody know that that congressional hearing, that Senate Banking Committee hearing is coming up, and hopefully we'll be able to tune into that. That would be fantastic. But like I said, this goes to show you, like, look, on the internet protocols, infrastructure side, PayID, Ripple is behind PayID, obviously, right? And, you know, it is very clear from what David is saying that they're addressing that back-end issue that makes the user experience even more comfortable from business to consumer. So pretty incredible. Now, looking at the digital dollar side, the reason I'm bringing this up about Christopher Giancarlo is because once you have that solution straight, now you're talking about the on and off ramps about how we move in and out of the digital asset space or the digital space in general. You know, now we're talking about, if we have business A and business B and they're using PayID, simple solutions put in place for their company, and there's a digital dollar representation happening on distributed ledger technology system, then we can talk about the fact that we're up and running because we've addressed not only the back end, the ease of use, but also converting other things like currencies, fiats, and getting them on a distributed ledger technology system or a blockchain system. So that way we can actually connect the different areas of fragmentation. So this space isn't just a digital asset space. It's the new internet of value, right? It's the new financial system, right? And now we're talking about approaching a real place where we can be sending value back and forth, no matter what you are, whether a consumer, business, or a bank. We can be sending value back and forth like email. So that's the end goal here, ultimately. Okay, so let's move through a couple more things here. Let's take another step here. So this is a NASDAQ article. And basically, it talks about central bank digital currencies are primed to generate significant financial shift in our lifetime. However, unless these instruments heed the lessons learned from fiat currency, innovation will be for naught. Interoperability persists as one of the most significant hurdles to both CBDC adoption and functionality. As such, it is integral that central banks converge on this idea and harness compatibility. Now, here we come into this compatibility issue again. You know, David Schwartz talked about this also in his talk, and I didn't play the whole thing because I want to get through this information, but essentially all these different, whether it's fiats or whether it's businesses or banks, it really doesn't matter. If they all have a different system, there has to be a compatibility area. There has to be a place where interoperability meets, right? Where compatibility exists, where there is a meeting point between the two systems and something to interface with them to allow them to exchange the value, no matter what their system is. So the term CDC is a slight misnomer there. After all, the several types of these include retail CBDCs, which essentially act as digital fiat, used as daily purchases and transactions. Then there's wholesale CBDCs, which are primarily facilitate interbank settlement. Regardless of CBDC classification, the same regulatory rules inclusive to AML and KYC compliance and monetary policy apply. However, it's retail CBDC that's causing the biggest stir if their inherent benefits such as ease of storage, usage, and speediness are realized. Regional retail iterations of CBDCs could readily challenge the dominance of the U.S. dollar. And isn't that what this conversation is really about? Is that it goes on to talk about, you know, what China has done and the progress they've made, the pressure that puts on the United States. And, you know, then it goes on even further to talk about back at Mark Carney when he spoke last year at Jackson Hole, Wyoming, about calling for a synthetic hedge money currency to replace the dollar, which I found interesting. And it goes on also to talk about interoperability or bust. And the key point here is that the writer, the freelance writer for NASDAQ article here, or guest contributor as they call them, really gets it. They really get the whole idea about how you have to have this compatibility and interoperability, or none of this works. None of this works. So it's quite interesting, this whole, and I'm not going to read the whole article to you. Obviously, there's a lot here. However, you know, the questions that need to be solved are really fastly approaching, because it used to be, well, do we need to develop a central bank digital currency? I don't even think that's a question anymore. The answer is yes. The question now is how to regulate them, right? What approach do we take? Do we launch a two-tiered CBDC where it's retail and it's also back-end, or do we just launch a back-end intra-settlement CBDC? I mean, I think that conversation may still exist for some, but the answer or the question whether or not we need central bank digital currencies Yeah, the answer is yes, and I think it's long gone and away, and that's a great stride forward. So now, to that point, we know that Christopher Giancarlo is going to be speaking in front of Congress. There's also someone else out here that is trying to offer a solution for the digital dollar. Let's take a look at them for a second. Federal Reserve Chairman comments show need for a triple layer consensus, says L3COS CEO Zarab Asheville. Commenting on this, Dr. Zarab Asheville says, we welcome the seriousness with which the Federal Reserve is looking at blockchain solutions for creating central bank digital currency or digital dollar. We firmly believe that such a digital currency must uphold the sovereignty and authority that it represents. It is what is needed in a blockchain consensus operating system that allows 3 layers of governments, corporations, and individuals to operate efficiently and securely in a digitalized economy that reflects the actual world we live in, and governments must play a leading role in creating systems. Listen to this part here. A blockchain platform that can be suitable when each sovereign has its own node, allowing their governments to embed their laws and regulations into their currency and control issuance backed by sovereign bonds. Interesting. Such a platform provides central authorities with building blocks to develop their own digital currencies while benefiting from the strength of a global system, much like how a company like De La Rue prints currency and does not influence monetary policy. Now, I'm going to read this whole article to you either. The point of me reading this article to you is to let you know that it's not just Christopher Giancarlo out here wanting to create a solution for the digital dollar and the network that it should run on. I think this is pretty interesting because we know where the Fed Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell stands on this matter. So this gets more interesting. Again, several different fronts being approached here by blockchain, interoperability of it, and digital asset solutions for all these different areas. Now, we're getting ready to move to a new area here. So we're looking at what PayID has offered as a solution, right? Now we're looking at the idea and notion of what a digital dollar and central bank digital currencies in general can offer as a solution to this new financial system and blockchain era. Let's keep moving, because here's an article here that we actually, I believe, covered back in June 11th, and it's mutual fund giant Vanguard, which, by the way, is responsible for over $6 trillion in asset management. Not exactly a corner store. Okay, so Vanguard's end goal for the pilot is to improve the process of securitization with blockchain, the decades-old Wall Street practice of repackaging loans into bonds. Sold to investors as one of the many firms are trying to reimagine with blockchain technology. In March of this year, mortgage equity startup figure securitized $150 million in home equity loans. Vanguard and Symbiont have been working together to use blockchain technology in capital markets since 2017. Vanguard hopes to see faster, more transparent, and more automated markets because of the technology. Vanguard is dedicated to providing innovative world-class solutions that help advance the financial services industry. Warren Pennington, principal and head of Vanguard's Investment Management FinTech Strategies Group, said in a press release, adding, by digitizing and streamlining the ABS issuance process, we will be able to increase the speed and transparency of transactions while reducing the cost and minimizing exposure to risk, which ultimately leads to a more efficient business model for future generations of capital market activity. I have to say, you know, when you look at this, and I know I didn't read the very beginning, but let me go back here. Just, you know, Vanguard, Valley Forge, PA-based investment manager, worked in close collaboration with blockchain startup Symbiont and unnamed U.S. ABS issuer BNY Mellon, directly connected to Ripple, Citi, and State Street. Unbelievable. State Street is applied to be able to custody digital assets themselves. Vanguard modeled for full life cycle of an ABS settlement on blockchain and pilot. So coming to this more recent article here, Vanguard's blockchain platform for foreign exchange will go live in Q3 2020. Now we're talking about the FX market, right? Mutual fund giant Vanguard has completed another blockchain pilot that aims to change the risk profile of foreign exchange transactions. The Valley Forge PA-based investment firm ran a pilot on Symbiont's Assembly blockchain with participation from State Street, BNY Mellon, and investment firm Franklin Templeton. Vanguard and Franklin Templeton acted as dealer banks, and State Street and BNY Mellon acted as counterparty banks, as well as custodians, as Symbiont's foreign exchange lead, Zoe Zaccarelli. Now, let me just say, all right, so we know that State Street has openly applied for custody of digital assets. We know BNY Mellon is absolutely an investor in Ripple. We know Franklin Templeton is working directly with Stellar. Vanguard has obviously shown that they are moving to a digital system. This is remarkable. Symbiont believes that the foreign exchange platform will go into production into the third quarter of 2020. The pilot has helped to prove out some of the capabilities that address areas of uncompensated risk and collateral linked instruments like FX forward contracts. Melissa Kennedy, a Vanguard spokesman, said in an emailed statement, "Over the next 12 months, we will continue to build our capabilities on the platform with partners." The FX announcement follows a digital asset-backed securities pilot, which we just covered. Vanguard announced the completion of earlier this month. FX pilot's completion also shows that the Assembly blockchain could quickly become a viable option for many large enterprises engaged in FX. According to Zaccarelli, the pilot proves a use case for Assembly that applies to all foreign exchange contracts, including swaps and outrights, which is an FX transaction where two parties agree to buy or sell a certain amount of currency at a predetermined rate in the future. Well, I have to say, when we're talking about the FX markets, I got to go back to it, guys. You know how I am, a needle stuck. Christopher Giancarlo works for Wilkie Barr legal firm. They are also counsel to Ripple. He released a paper. He put out his professional opinion that XRP is not only not a security, but a currency. And what would you need to be a bridge asset in the FX market? A security, a commodity, or a currency? I'm asking for a friend. Anyway. Buy and sell side firms use foreign exchange for hedging speculative purposes. The market is governed by contracts that serve as credit agreements, which specify how the over-the-counter market should exchange the collateral used for these transactions. The calculations and collateral movement often take 2 to 3 days to process. Currently, you are 2 to 3 days removed from being protected against the sort of underlying credit risk that associated with those transactions, Zaccarelli said. Now you can be protected as soon as the last calculation period. So I tell you something, when we look at all these different things, we look at what PayID is doing. And by the way, I don't find it a coincidence at all that PayID was announced just days before the FATF deadline on all exchanges needing to be KYC, AML, CFT, and travel rule compliant. And then you see like what that solution can bring to all different kinds of industry and consumers. And then you look further to what the advancements are now of the conversations when it comes to central bank digital currencies, and then you see what major legacy firms like these companies like Vanguard Investment Group, right? And NASDAQ's having these conversations too. I mean, we had this conversation about NASDAQ's relationship with Symbiont as well, and NASDAQ's relationship with R3 as well, and what they're working towards where it comes to settling securities and derivatives contracts and FX market now. And it is absolutely exciting time for me. I know it is for you guys as well, but I tell you, if the price is going to be 18 cents, this is the kind of news I want, right? If the price is going to, I'm not selling a used car, but if the price is going to be 18 cents in the market and Bitcoin's below 10,000, all these things, I want to keep seeing this kind of news because I understand for myself that eventually at some point, and this is not financial advice, the fundamentals will catch up to the price will catch up to the fundamentals. That's where I'm at. Not financial advice, everybody. All right, that's going to do it for me. Happy Saturday. I hope you guys are having a wonderful weekend. Leave a comment below and share this with somebody you know. I'll catch you guys on the next one.